Mahi ki jai, Tulsi Devi ki jai, Bhakti Devi ki jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki jai, Transcendental Book Distribution ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki jai. All glories to the Assembly Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Assembly.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to the Assembly Devotees.
Hare Krishna.
All glories to Shri Guru and Ranga. The spiritual master are the only way which we can attain pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace, one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. I only wish to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus mouth. And that through his lotus feet for perfection fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic brain my emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and the master of devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girvardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girvardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girvardhari Jaya Gopi Janaballabha Girvardhari Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Shodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Brajajana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Vishwam Sugadharaj Vichar Stodes at the CC Mud. A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Jai Om Vishnu Pam Sugadharaj Vichar Stodes at the CC Mud Bhakti Siddhanta Sajitakura Prabhupada Ki
Jai.
Go Premanandi
Hari Hari Bol.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 22, the marriage of Kardama Muni and Devahuti, text 34. Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yad Abramashayitum Bhoga.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Nishekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Nishekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Nishekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayashu.
Nishnatam Yogamayashu.
Munim Svayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yadabram Shaitum Bhoga.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Shekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yadabram Shahitam Bhoga.
Yadabram Shayitam Bhoga.
Shekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Vaishnavis.
Nishnatam Yogamayashu.
Nishnatam Yogamayashu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yadabram Shayitam Bhoga.
Yadabram Shayitam Bhoga.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Nishnatam Yogamayasu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Munim Swayam Bhuvam Manu.
Yad Abram Shayitum Bhoga.
Yadabram Shayitam Bhoga.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nashekur Bhagavat Param.
Nishnatam.
Nishnatam.
Absorb.
Absorb.
Yogamayasu.
Yogamayasu.
In temporary enjoyment.
In temporary enjoyment.
Munim.
Munim.
Who is equal to a saint.
Is equal to the saints.
Swayambhuvam.
Swayambhuvam.
Swayambhuva.
Swayambhuva.
Manum.
Manum.
Manu.
Manu.
Yat.
Yat.
From which?
From which?
Abram Shayitum.
Abram Shayitum.
To cause to deviate.
To cause to deviate.
Bhoga.
Bhoga.
Material enjoyment.
Material enjoyment.
Not.
Not.
Not. Sheku.
Sheku.
We're able.
We're able.
Bhagavat Param.
Bhagavat Param.
Was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
It was a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Translation. Thus, Swayambhuva Manu was a saintly king. Although absorbed in material happiness, he was not dragged to the lowest grade of life, for he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna-conscious atmosphere. Purport. The kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. But Swayambhuva Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned souls in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification, but if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere as depicted here, or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then, in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna conscious movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitang Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasani Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Part of this chapter, and certainly this verse, sounds very encouraging for our usual conceptions of spiritual life. Nishnatam yogamaya su. Absorbed in temporary enjoyment, while at the same time still being Krishna conscious. Yes. Here is the preaching formula. And let us note the purport and underline these statements in the purport. In spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advances in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. Therefore, the Krishna conscious movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Okay.
Sign me up. My favorite purport.
How are we to reconcile this with, for example, what is shown by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? There was a Brahmana, not a Vaishnava Brahmana, but a caste Brahmana, addicted to performing pious activities for going to the heavenly planets. In other words, addicted to dharma for the purpose of material comforts, and unable to recognize a Vaishnava, what to speak of unable to recognize Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for who he is. So this Brahmana was angry because he was not allowed inside the confidential kirtans at the house of Srivas Thakur. The standard was that only those who were fit in pure devotion could witness the ecstasy shown by Mahaprabhu and his associates in their kirtan lila. So this Brahmana was very envious. They wouldn't let him in. So he decided to curse Lord Chaitanya, because Brahmanas had some potency at that point, even in Kali Yuga, a little more than 500 years ago. And the curse of a Brahmana was considered something. Of course, you know from the first canto how the young Brahmana boy Sringi cursed Parikshit Maharaj. But that was 5,000 years ago, before Kali Yuga hit hard with its full onslaught. But even 500 years ago, during the time of Mahaprabhu, Brahmanas were known to have some kind of Shakti, some kind of power. And so therefore, when a Brahmana would bless you, it would be taken very seriously. And when a Brahmana would curse you, it would be taken very seriously. You were ruined. So the Brahmana, angry because he couldn't be a spectator in the confidential kirtans, decided to curse Lord Chaitanya. And what was the curse? He broke his robin's thread. That's how you do it, in case you have any problems.
Kids don't try this at home.
I curse you that you will never enjoy material happiness. And what was Mahaprabhu's reaction? Dance in ecstasy. Oh, how wonderful. Oh, how wonderful. Now, we like to say that, Leela, but what about when it comes to our own life?
You can show the example.
You are showing. Yes, we have a hard time understanding, although we glorify Kunti Devi, we have a hard time understanding her statement, let the miseries happen again and again. You have to see the whole picture. The whole picture is that a real Vaishnava is not affected by material happiness or material distress. We all know how material distress affects. And certainly no one wants distress, even though it comes uninvited. But material happiness is also an external influence that a Vaishnava absorbed in devotional service doesn't pay attention to. Just like the weather. I was just in Denver for some days, and I was shocked upon my arrival, May 1st, that there was a snowstorm. So I said to the devotees, what is this? I spent months planning my arrival in Denver to avoid the turbulent season where the weather changes 4 times a day. And then I arrive and there's snow. And they just looked at me like, well, what's the big deal? Things are like that, until probably July. So I was like, I was happy. I
Came to SanDiego when it's cold.
that's another thing. A little bundle of I remember on the North Island in New Zealand, there were snow flurries once. And all the devotees ran outside the temple they'd never seen snow before. Snow flurries! Oh. So there I was in Denver, and I was wondering, what's going on? This is major. There's snow on May 1st. But the devotees were just oblivious to it. And then the next day, while there's still snow on the ground, okay, the sun came out. The devotees had told me, don't worry, the sun's coming out tomorrow, it'll all melt away. So yes, the sun came out the next day, but there's still snow on the ground. And I see people jogging in the street with shorts and t-shirts. Wait a minute, be affected. I want some company. Be affected by the weather. There they are in the street, men with their t-shirts, ladies with their, whatever you call it, sleeveless tops, and there's snow on the ground. So that shows you how life goes on in spite of temperature changes. Similarly, life goes on in spite of happiness and distress. Prahlad Maharaj makes a very crucial statement about this. This is probably the first thing that I ever read of Krishna conscious knowledge that totally knocked me out. I was in New York City going to visit my significant other, and I was only 21, so forgive me. I was as fortunate as our Bhajin Ryan Raj to come to Krishna consciousness at what age?
You've done a much better job of your time, Marvin.
17, huh? Yes. So, there I was. I came out of the subway station, and I saw a devotee and he had some books. So I went toward him to approach him. Simultaneously, the significant other's coming, but I focused on the devotee, by Krishna's grace. I went up and said to the devotee, "What do you got there?" He said, "Oh, I have these books." One of the books he had was the Transcendental Teachings of Prahlad Maharaj. So I started reaching into my pocket to get money to pay him a few dollars for the book. But then, being a New Yorker, I knew what to do. She was coming. So why should I pay for the book? The purpose of a significant other is that she pays for everything. So I said, "Hey, why don't you give him some money?" You know? So I got the book. We went over to her house. She was in the kitchen, cooking unmentionables, and there I was on the living room couch, and I started reading. And I got to page 2, where Prabhupada says, quoting Prahlad Maharaj, you know the verse in 7th Canto, Sukham Aindrikam Daitya Deha Dehinam Yogina Sarvatra Labhyate Daivad Yata Dukam Ayatnata. The happiness, the rasa, the flavor, and Prabhupada really got into it. He really enhanced Prahlad Maharaj's scientific statement. The rasa, the flavor that you get from sense gratification is the same no matter what kind of body. So why work so hard just to get the same flavor that the cat and dog is getting? I just collapsed on the couch. I felt like a bomb, like an atom bomb hit me in the chest or something. Why should I work so hard to get the same rasa, the same flavor that the cats and dogs are getting? So I resolved then and there. Tomorrow, I'm going into Greenwich Village. That's the part of New York where they had all the bohemian bookstores, countercultural bookstores. I'm going to find more books by this Swami whose name I can't pronounce. While I was collapsed on the couch, my significant other came running out of the kitchen. "What's wrong? What's wrong?" I just stood up and nothing at all. But those words, conveyed through parampara, coming from Prahlad Maharaj, totally astounded me. I had never read anything like that before. Happiness is such a concern that people are in anxiety about it. I just finished a university preaching tour in parts of the USA. I've done about 15 universities. And the anxiety topic is what the student leaders are requesting the most. See, our students are in such stress, they're actually having mental breakdowns. On all the campuses these days, there are student organizations devoted exclusively to the mental health of the students because it's such a problem. So they asked me, please speak about stress, anxiety, how it's not necessary to kill yourself trying to be successful. So I explained to them statistics. The World Health Organization has calculated that amongst all the developed nations in the world, the USA is one of the least happy. But it goes further. Amongst all the developed nations of the world, the USA is by far the champion in anxiety disorders. It holds the #1 post by a wide margin. So much so that the World Health Organization has calculated that in the lifetime of 1 out of 3 Americans, they'll experience anxiety disorders to the extent that professional treatment should be required. 1 out of 3. Then you have the American Psychological Association, the largest organization of psychologists in the USA. They have stated, they've declared that the USA is on the verge of a stress-induced public health crisis. Not a public health crisis from a pandemic, some kind of plague hitting en masse, but a public health crisis due to stress and anxiety. So everyone wants to be happy, yet the process that they're going through is putting themselves in such anxiety. So then maybe there's something wrong with the definition of happiness. But everyone will say, I know what it's like to be happy. I just need more of it. But they actually don't know. This is astonishing that people actually don't know what is the happiness that they're putting themselves in so much anxiety to get. Then you see Swami Vipra, although absorbed in material happiness, he's always situated in his Krishna consciousness. So what's going on? Happiness and distress will be there as long as you have a material body, and as long as you are situated in the material atmosphere. But that doesn't mean the Vaishnava has to be affected by these externals. You heard in the previous purport, Prabhupada explained very succinctly, the miseries of material existence cannot affect the status of Krishna consciousness. It is not that the miseries of the material completely vanish when one takes to Krishna consciousness, but for one who is Krishna conscious, the miseries of material existence have no effect. We cannot stop the miseries of the material atmosphere, but Krishna consciousness is the antiseptic method to protect us from being affected by the miseries of material existence. So just like it's raining outside, you can't stop that, but you can have an umbrella to shield you from being affected by the rain. So similarly, material happiness and distress comes and goes due to the workings of material nature. This body is a product of material nature. When we talk about body, we include the mind. And this body is a karmic reaction. So various amounts of happiness and distress will come to various individuals due to their past and present contact with material nature. This will happen for a devotee too. Devotees have material bodies situated in material nature. But according to the intensity of the devotee's absorption in devotional service, he or she won't be affected by material happiness or distress. Now you might say, you don't mind not being affected by distress, but shouldn't we be affected by happiness? But you have to understand the quality of material happiness as compared to the taste of devotional service. There are two different realities. Material happiness is a phenomenon born of material nature. Karanam guna sangasya sadasa jyoni janvasu. Due to contact with the material nature by the conditioned soul, a strange brew of material happiness and distress is produced. So it is not the soul's natural status to be in contact with material distress or material happiness. And material happiness is an agitation, just like material stress is. Material happiness just hits you and rocks your mind, destabilizes you. Oh, I'm happy. Oh, this is great. And then it goes. So when I'm speaking at schools, I explain to the students, there's a problem with material happiness, even though you're in such anxiety to get it. There are some basic problems with it. Number one, you have a quality problem. And number two, you have a duration problem. And so I break it down to them. How their problems are mainly due to chasing something that will not satisfy them. First of all, it's doubtful they'll get it. And secondly, if they get it, they won't be satisfied with it. Then we start talking about success, because this is the USA. If you're in the university, you've got to be hardwired to be successful. And I explain to them that they have the wrong metaphors for their life. Tell them generally their life is based on two metaphorical principles. Number one, the race. You're running a race, you have to stay at the front, near the front, otherwise your life is a failure. You have to watch who's trying to get past you. You have to always forge ahead. You've got to make it to the finish line and be number one or minimum number two. And what's the worst thing that can happen to you? you stumble and fall. And what happens when you stumble and fall?
Coming last.
They all run right over you.
That's right. I just paused, I watched their faces, and you could just see the fear and the anxiety just shoot out of their skull. Stumble and fall. It means I'll be trampled by everyone. Not only will I lose the race, but I'll be trampled. So I tell them, this is where your anxiety is coming from. You have the wrong metaphor for your life. You inherited the wrong story. You had the wrong vision instilled in you. But the race is one thing, but there's another one. The ladder. You have to climb the ladder. You see, you can't just study at the university these days and excel. You also have to have extracurricular activities. It's all going to go on your CV. You have to do student activities to show how talented you are, how extroverted you are, how you're able to study and at the same time be involved in so many other affairs. So the whole point is how to climb the ladder of success at school, which will lead to climbing the ladder of success in the corporate world. So I explained to them, when you climb the ladder, if you make it to the top, you're probably going to notice that you're lonely up there. Because in the ladder metaphor, there's only room for one person on the top rung. So you might, and it's doubtful, you might make it to the top. But if you do, you'll notice there's no one there with you. And in fact, once you're at the top, if you do make it there, which is doubtful, but once you get to the top, you're going to start wondering, maybe I climbed up the wrong ladder. Maybe this is not for me. So I explained to them that these two metaphors are ruining their life, looking at their life as a race and as a ladder. Kardamanmuni's father-in-law, the emperor, Swami Vipra, he's successful, but his attitude is totally different. He's not attached to the material happiness that surrounds him. His heart is actually controlled, the acharyas explain. His heart is controlled by Krishna's pastimes. So it's not that, wow, this is bhakti is great. Just look at my kingdom. Just look at my opulence. God is good. He's accepting it all as paraphernalia to be engaged in Krishna's service. In other words, if he has it, he'll use it for Krishna's pleasure. If he doesn't have it, it's not the end of his world. This is the difference between a bhakti yogi dealing with material happiness and material facility, and a non-devotee dealing with material happiness and material facility. It's the same thing with so-called progress from technological proliferation. If the gadgets are there and we can use them in Krishna's service, we use them. If they're not there, it's not the end of our life. And nor do we consider that our problems in life have been solved because of technology. We don't think that. We don't think that our inner life has been extraordinarily affected in any kind of way. So we're tolerant of what is around us in that whatever can be used in Krishna's service, we use, but there's not an attitude of attachment. Swami Vipra, you've heard the descriptions, how his palace was filled with an atmosphere that eradicated the three miseries of material existence. But what is that atmosphere that eradicated the threefold miseries of material existence? It's the intensity of focus on Krishna. And that anyone can do in any circumstances. Bhaktivinoda Thakur writes in one song that whether there's so-called happiness or so-called distress, chant Hare Krishna. Anyone know the Bengali Sukhe Dukhe? The principle is to always chant Hare Krishna. And that's how the purport ended today. That In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Sounds very simple. Sometimes people say it's too simple. That's the attitude in Satya Yuga. Jiva Goswami explains that. The Maha Mantra is always existing. It's not that it just appeared in the Kali Yuga. But although it's there in the Satya Yuga, it's not the Yuga Dharma. It's not the prescribed method. And furthermore, the residents of Kali Yuga, because they're all Paramahansas, there's not even Varnashram Dharma then, the residents of Satya Yuga think that chanting Hare Krishna is too simple. Because they can be in samadhi for 60,000 of their 100,000 year lifespan. So they think that there's got to be something more than that. They're practicing Ashtanga Yoga, the Eightfold Yoga system. Nevertheless, the chanting of the Hare Krishna mantra is always present. In this age of Kali, there is no other option. Whether you think it's too simple or too complex, there's no other choice. By focused chanting on the Hare Krishna mantra, you can become immune to the effects of material distress and material happiness. Throughout Bhagavad Gita, you may have noticed again and again, Krishna talks about not being affected by material happiness or distress. And of course, Queen Kunti, she's one of the most wonderful examples of that. She's evaluating happiness and distress according to what brings Krishna's presence. Wait a minute. When there's material happiness, when everything's going good, Krishna's not around. But when there's distress, Krishna's with us more. So therefore, when you evaluate through this measuring system of when and how is Krishna the most with us, I see that when there's distress, he's the most with us. Therefore, bring on the distress. She's the most liberated woman. She's evaluating the externals of her situation based on what is most conducive to bring Krishna's association. In that way, she's showing how to live beyond material happiness and distress. Yet the distress of the Pandavas in terms of their circumstances was such that Bhishma Dev, the greatest warrior, was in tears about it, thinking about it. Yet Kunti Devi is saying, let it happen again and again. If this is a calamity, well, so be it, because the so-called calamity brings Krishna's presence. So we may think, how will we be on such a platform? But the process of Bhakti Yoga does work. As attached as we are to material comfort and material happiness, the chanting of Hare Krishna, the process of serving Krishna selflessly is so powerful that we'll relish a chance to engage in Krishna's service much more than a chance to feel material happiness. And that will be astounding for us, because we know how attached we are to material happiness, and we hate material distress. But by dedicating our lives to Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan mission, we achieve a status beyond material happiness and distress in a way that shocks us. I never knew this was for real. The process actually works. Amazing. I'm more attached to an opportunity to serve Krishna than I am for being attached to an opportunity that gives me material happiness. We think that we'll practically never get beyond our complexity of wanting Krishna's pleasure and material happiness at the same time. But what Prabhupada is telling us in these purports is, all right, some of you have comfortable material circumstances, some of you have material opulence. All right. There's no point in getting averse or attached. Because actually, as the acharyas explain, bhakti, pure bhakti, has nothing to do with attachment or aversion. It has nothing to do with enjoyment, material enjoyment, or material renunciation. There's a big mistake made often that material renunciation is an essential part of bhakti, but bhakti is all about attachment to Krishna in such a way that the bhakti yogi does not become absorbed in negating material existence. Rather, he or she uses everything in Krishna's service. So the bhakti yogi is not for enjoying material happiness, nor getting into a whole anti-material happiness complexity. Simply, the bhakti yogi is focused on what will give Krishna the most pleasure. Remember Sudama Vipra in Krishna Lila? The poor Brahmana had less than nothing. And his wife convinced him, you were friends with Krishna as a child. Why don't you go see Krishna and get some wealth? And Sudama thought this was reprehensible. I'm not going to see Krishna for material benefit. But his wife kept pushing him. And actually, she was right from her side. They had so little food, they were trembling from hunger. And she was trembling the most because she would, whatever tiny bit of food they got, she would give to her husband. They practically had no clothes. In other words, you could say somehow or other, Sudama was leading a too austere life. But he was comfortable with that. But his wife was thinking, we're householders. We need at least some clothes to wear and a little bit of food on the table. And she was right. But her husband didn't want to go see Krishna for material benefit. But finally, he surrendered. He thought, I'll take it in this way. My wife is giving me an opportunity to see Krishna. I'll just leave it at that. I'll just take it that she's prodding me to go see Krishna. I'm not going to ask Krishna for anything, but at least I'll have an opportunity to see Krishna. So that's the way it'll be. That's the end of it all. So you know how he left to see Krishna, and he asked his wife, I need something to give to Krishna, and she went out and begged for some super hard, cheap rice and wrapped it in a ripped cloth. And so Sudama, that's the gift he's going to give to Krishna. And you know what happened at the palace when he arrived at Rukmini's palace, and how Krishna snatched the gift from him. But the point I want to get to is Sudama's leaving the palace. Krishna even walked him to the main gate. That's a sign of respect when you walk a guest to the door, by the way. So Krishna did that. The Supreme Personality of Godhead walked Sudama to the gate. And then Sudama proceeded on his own. And what was his attitude? He began glorifying Krishna. How wonderful is my Lord. He didn't give me anything. Would you have done that?
I would have turned around and gone back.
How wonderful is my Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knows my mentality. He knew that if he would just give me the tiniest bit of wealth, it would blow my mind and I'd fall down. He knows my consciousness. He didn't give me the slightest thing. How great this is. Sounds too severe, doesn't it? Sounds even scary, doesn't it? But what was Krishna thinking? Krishna's thinking, I don't have anything in all my possession that will so I can properly reciprocate with him. Even if I give him the wealth of Indra, it won't be enough. He's given me this rice. You remember while Krishna was eating that hard rice, Rukmini tried to stop him. There were various motives, the acharyas say, that she had. One motive was that she wanted to share it with the others in the palace. She wanted something left over of the prasad remnants to share with the other relatives in the palace. The other explanation the acharyas give is that she's thinking this rice is too hard on Krishna's stomach. He's already eaten enough. But most of all, as the goddess of fortune, I'm forced to reciprocate with this Sudama because he's pleasing Krishna. If Krishna goes on eating more and more of this rice, how am I going to reciprocate? What can I give him? And it turns out Krishna is thinking the same thing as Sudama has left Dwarka and going back to his hovel, his shack. Krishna's thinking, I've got nothing in my possession that I can give him that is anyway near in value what he's given me. So Krishna's thinking, this is like the farmer. The farmer does yajnas so that there'll be rain for his crops. The rain is thinking, there's nothing I can do that will properly reciprocate, suitably reciprocate with the farmer for his yajna. Therefore, I can't rain during the day. I'll rain at night while the farmer is asleep because in that way, because I can't reciprocate properly, I'll just
Sneak in and out.
right, sneak in and out. So Krishna's thinking the same thing. I can't reciprocate with Sudama. Even if I give him the wealth of Indra, it's not enough. Therefore, when he was at the palace, I didn't give him anything. But I'll do it behind his back. When he gets home, he's in for a big surprise. Just like when the farmer wakes up in the morning. Oh, there's been rain at night. Oh. So that's how Krishna arranged for Sudama. He got home, Sudama got home, and you know what he saw. It was unbelievable. And so he then had to live in that opulence. So the acharyas point out that Sudama had a slight attachment to austerity. So Krishna literally blew his mind. You're a little bit very subtly attached to being super renounced, to your reputation of being a very austere Brahmana. You're a little bit too attached to that. Take more wealth than Indra has. Now we'll say, wow, that's religion. Krishna do that to me. Because we're used to hearing examples all the time of Krishna taking everything away. And now you have Krishna just giving. Yeah, this is real bhakti. But the bottom line is that Krishna knows how to treat each devotee for the real opulence, which is love of Krishna. But unless one is detached from both happiness and distress, it'll be difficult to understand all this. And we can even become victims of prosperity religion. There's a big segment of the USA Christian world that is all about prosperity Christianity. Ministers even preach, I've heard them, they preach in their pulpit, Jesus was no poor man. Jesus wants you to have money. Why should the wealth of the world be in the hands of the non-believers? Jesus wants his people to have all the wealth, all the comforts. And that a sign of your holiness is your wealth. So we don't want to in any way risk taking on such conceptions into bhakti. Therefore, it's very important for us to understand how to be equal in both material distress and material happiness. And that's what Krishna calls for in Bhagavad Gita several times. That the sign of being a genuine yogi, sthita di muni, is that you're not affected by material distress or material happiness. Neither rock your boat. You're focused on how to give pleasure through devotional service. And that's what Swami Bhagavatam is doing. His whole palace, his whole government, his whole life is all about how to give pleasure to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All right, he's in opulent circumstances. He's using it all in Krishna's service. If it goes away, it's not the end of his life. In all circumstances, tasmad yogi bhavarjuna, as Krishna says in the Gita. In all circumstances, Arjuna, be a yogi. I was explaining last night how Srila Prabhupada's definition of an expert business person is one who not simply makes a profit when the price is going up, but also knows how to make a profit when the market's going down. So similarly, a devotee in all circumstances, whether it's so-called happiness or so-called distress, knows how to serve Krishna, and in fact knows how to increase service to Krishna. That's our goal. Any questions? All right, you have a comment, of course.
No, I have a question. Actually, you answered this question very nicely, but just to churn it a little bit. We have the prayer by Queen Kunti, let this distress come, when I'm in happiness, I forget you. Does that mean that we can only really taste surrender and dependence and being, fully surrender to Krishna's lotus feet if we're in distress?
No, that's illustrating one side of the coin. She's showing how the important thing is not the distress, the important thing is attachment to Krishna. Similarly, Swami Manu is showing that there's comfort all around me, but my Krishna consciousness is not affected. In fact, the Bhagavatam teaches us that when you're surrounded by material happiness and comfort, you intensely thank Krishna. This is all an opportunity to use in your service.
So the measure in either circumstance is not this calibration, am I happy?
Right.
The measure is, whatever I've got, I give to Krishna. If I have a small amount, it's the same measure. I give it all to Krishna. If I have a lot, I give it all to Krishna. Circumstances are totally irrelevant. The measure is, whatever I have, everything for Krishna.
Tasmad yogi bhavarjuna. And Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. We're meant to be yogis, not the press the nose and physical posture eccentrics. But a real yogi knows how, no matter what the circumstance, how to engage in Krishna's service for Krishna's pleasure.
Because you asked for a comment just quickly. There was a guy before I became a devotee I used to listen to on the radio. It was set for my alarm clock, my radio alarm to wake up. Reverend Ike.
Oh, yeah.
And Reverend Ike
You used to listen to him?
Oh, I love Reverend Reverend Ike used to say, I'll tell you something, brothers and sisters. God ain't black. God ain't white. God is green. But my favorite Reverend Ike was when they would pass the plates in the church. He always made sure there was a nice copper or brass, what they passed around.
Yes.
And he'd say, I'll tell you something, brothers and sisters. God is everywhere. God sees everything. God hears everything. And he don't want to hear no change. Everybody had to throw a bill in. Who's the guy that throws in the change and it makes this? So you're right. It permeates everything, this measure of God loving me. Protestant work ethic. Anyway, you're right. You made a prosperity religion, so thank you, Maharaj.
I can't believe you listened to Reverend.
I'd still listen to him if he was on. Because he was so bogus. He was such an exploit.
Well, since you're into it, one of the top prosperity ministers in Atlanta, his name is Creflo Dollar.
Blow those dollars to me.
Hey, anything else? Yeah.
Thank you. We've been talking about aversion to material happiness and or not being attached. And so you mentioned that we should do things, and as Maharaj was saying, that we should, whatever we have, that we should still try to serve Krishna, and whether it's a little or a lot. But sometimes we have these material endeavors, and we say, oh, well, this I'm doing for Krishna, and when I, get this or that, then I'm going to offer this to Krishna. So how do we know that we are actually pleasuring Krishna, and how do we know that when or not to continue with this endeavor? Maybe it's good for our spiritual life or not good.
It's a common question. You see, we have to know the subtle but real distinction between karma yoga and bhakti yoga. Karma yoga means I'll give the results to Krishna, but I'm attached to acting in a certain way. Full bhakti yoga means whatever Krishna wants, however Krishna wants it. You're not attached to the results, and you're not attached to what you're doing. So most devotees should be looking up to karma yoga. They should be eager to sacrifice the results of their activities that they're attached to. They should be eager to sacrifice those results to Krishna. It's not that one should automatically look down at karma yoga, meanwhile, while not giving anything for Krishna's pleasure. But at the same time, we always have to broadcast the real standard of bhakti, which is pure devotion. Give the results to Krishna and give the action that Krishna wants. Not only the results, but how does Krishna want me to act so that I give him the results? So we should be aware of that. But as our Krishna conscious society gets bigger and has all different types of devotees, it'd be very nice if you had a congregation of karma yogis who were working hard and sacrificing the results for Krishna. There's no doubt about that. At the same time, we have to always present the standard of pure bhakti and give those who want to make quicker progress to that standard, give them that opportunity. I remember when I became a devotee in the Brooklyn Temple in New York in 1973. There I was in the halfway house first for a few weeks with Dravida Prabhu and Agni Dev and Gopi Pranadana.
Gopi Janavalma is the leader.
Gopi Janavalma was the leader, yes. So I remember new devotee after new devotee was joining, and they would show up at the temple with their backpack and a guitar. And they knew just what their service to Krishna should be. What do you think?
I'm playing guitar now.
Yeah, so many of them said, I'm just on the verge of being famous. I'm inspired by George Harrison. I'm going to make music for Krishna. That's what I'm going to do. So new devotee after new devotee would have that attitude. I remember because I would talk to them because I was a new devotee. And hey, what brought you here? Well, I'm into music, and I want to change the consciousness of the world through music, and that's what I'm going to be doing here at this temple, is playing my guitar and making music that's going to change the whole world, because I was just on the verge of being recognized as but instead I decided I'm going to move into the temple, so I know just what I'm going to do. So obviously the temple can't operate if it's got 100 young men thinking they're all the next George Harrison, and that's what should be their service. So somehow or other, you have to work with their attachments in such a way that they can understand what is the principle of pure bhakti. For some it happens quickly, for some it takes a while. I remember after 3 weeks of being in the temple, I had my vision. I'm just going to move into the temple. I'm going to read Bhagavatam all day long. That's the way it's going to be. After 3 weeks of working at the press, sweeping the floor, and physically doing manual labor, collating books, because there was a printing press there, and so manual labor was required to put the various parts of the book together. So no one asked me, by the way, what was your propensity before? No one person asked me. Just, here's a broom. So after 3 weeks, I was on Harinam, and I sold a lot of incense packs to people watching the Harinam party. The temple president, Mali Radhan, heard that, and he came up to me and said, "You are a full-time Sankirtan devotee." Wait a minute, I joined this movement just to, read books all day. I love these books. That should be what I'm doing. But I became a full-time Sankirtan devotee. That meant, full-time Sankirtan devotee then meant 7 days a week.
And how many hours a day?
On Friday, you would not only, like the other days, go from 9 to 7, but on Friday and Saturday, because there were so many rock concerts then, we would stay out late on Friday and Saturday nights until 3 a.m. in the morning doing rock concerts at the big arenas. That was considered normal. And then Sunday came around. I remember. My dear friend Roman Panraj, he was in charge of the Sankirtan. So he was a brahmachari then. All right, Uz and Maya, who wants to come back for the Sunday feast? Oh, we're not Maya. We don't want to come back for the Sunday feast. Of course he wanted to come back. But that was full-time Sankirtan then. So I was always lamenting, oh Krishna, why am I doing this service? Why can't I have a nice temple service? Being around the altar when the maha comes off and reading books all day. Then what finally happened, after 2 years of doing nothing on Sankirtan, I had a great breakthrough. Bhrigupati was there. I was the Sankirtan devotee who distributed nothing, 7 days a week, year after year. And then one day it all changed. All of a sudden books started flying out of my hands. And I remember Bhrigupati running across the parking lot, this is outside New York City, running. What's going on? What's happening? You got a new mantra or something? You got to tell me. I said, look, after 2 years of doing nothing on Sankirtan every day for 7 days a week, after 2 years of that, I can tell you one thing for sure. What's happening now is not me. It was like Krishna said, all right, enough of your nonsense. I'm turning on the switch. So I was flying for a few months, floating out the door every day on Sankirtan. And then the health went down. Suddenly, I lost all my health. And I remember Gopi Jannavala, the temple president, came to me and said, you're going to have to change your service. I said, oh, no. I know that if I just do this service the rest of my life, I'd easily go back to Godhead. Finally, after 2 years, they called me the hard luck kid. I just couldn't sell any books, although I tried so hard. Now I'm selling books. I'm going to be like Vaisheshika. I'm going to be like Pragosh. I'm going to be up there at the top. I had a 5-year program worked out in my mind, and after 5 years, I'll be up there with Vaisheshika. But then my health collapsed. At the same time that Prabhupada was beating the drum about, where are my books, where are my books? Where is Chaitanya Charitamrita? Why are my books coming out so slow? So I think I mentioned something to Dravida, right?
Yeah, you definitely did. He said, it was like, Dravida, please, can you put in a word for me for Radha Ballabha? I've got a degree from Yale or whatever it was. Really? No one knew. And then so you got to come with us to
Yes.
LA.
Yes, I much as I love book distribution, I couldn't do it anymore. So we have to recognize as we advance in bhakti what we are attached to and what is best for Krishna's pleasure. I remember telling older devotees, if you were an older devotee, then that meant you were in Krishna consciousness 2 more years than anyone else. So I remember I was talking to Harikesh. I said, I can't give up Sankirtan. This is the only service that gives Prabhupada pleasure. He said, you know, we can speak like that for the enthusiasm of the devotees, but all services, when done for considering what gives Krishna pleasure, they're all actually equal. I said, really? So it was hard for me to let go of that service because I thought, this is the way I will go back to Godhead. I had it all figured out. But obviously, I'm not the supreme controller. And through devotional service, we get that wonderful lesson that we're not the supreme enjoyer, we're not the supreme controller. Still, we would be very happy to have an army of karma yogis supporting this temple, for example. those who are attached to being an architect, attached to being a IT wala, attached to being an engineer, but they offer all the fruits to Krishna. And for most people, that's the way it should be. At the same time, everyone should hear about the standard of pure bhakti. Okay?
Maharaj, if I could, one final word.
Of course.
Reference to the standard of pure bhakti, just to put it all into perspective, in Canto 8, Chapter 1, Text 7, Swayambhuva Manu was by nature not at all attached to enjoyment of the senses. Thus he gave up his kingdom of sense enjoyment and entered the forest with his wife to practice austerities. And the next verse describes how he stood on one foot for 100 years, chanting basically the Ishapanishad. So just to put it in perspective to what we hear today. So this is Swayambhuva Manu.
Any last questions from this side? All right. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Devamrita Swami Maharaj ki.
Those who are into it, 9:14, break the fast, take some grains. And Maharaj will be speaking tonight, 6 o'clock.
Yeah.